Well, it is that time of the year again. Your mum's starting to take the Christmas tree down from the attic. That Michael Bublé CD is starting to defrost. And more importantly, it is going to be the start of the very first Triple Crown event of this season. The UK Championship gets underway in York tomorrow. And it's going to be live on BBC, Eurosport, Discovery Plus, as always. Now, this year, just as it was last year, the tournament is going back to its roots, which for me is the best decision that's made in about a decade. And that's where you've got the top 16 already safely qualified for the last 32 in the main event. And then we've had qualifiers going on for the past week to decide the other 16 players that are going to join them. Now that's been decided, we've got the draw. And what I'm going to do during this video is go through that draw. I'm going to split it up into its 4 quarters. I'm going to predict, or try to predict, the winner of every single first round match. And then I'm going to try and predict who I think is most likely to advance from those 4 quarters to see what my semi-final is going to look like. So if we go straight into quarter number 1 and we start with the defending champion and a repeat of last year's final as he takes on Ding Junhui in what is probably the tie of the first round. Rob Walker almost had a heart attack when that draw got made live, and it is really, really exciting. I think Mark is obviously going to be on a crest of a wave. He's just won the Champion of Champions. He's usually a player for these big events. And it is a shame because, I've said before, I'm such a big fan of Ding and I love the way that he plays the game. And I do think watching him sort of back end of last season and a few events this season, I do think he's gradually improving his game. Obviously, he slipped out of the top 16 because he's had no consistency. And, the last time we saw him at the semi-finals final of a ranking event has been a while. We're sort of doing that on a consistent enough basis to be in the top 16. But I do think his game is getting better. He's playing in far more tournaments than we're used to seeing him in. It is just a case of getting more results against the big players. And I think Ding, he looks good in the qualifiers. And I think qualifying, he would have fancied his chances against probably most of the field. I think I could probably count on one hand the amount of players that I would fancy as a big favourite against Ding. And unfortunately, he's drawn one of them in Mark Allen. If Mark hadn't won the Champion of Champions a couple of weeks ago, I would have thought this might have been a little bit closer. But because Mark, like I say, is just going to be riding that crest of confidence, and he's going to have happy memories of what he'd done here last year, I am going to back Mark, but I do think that's going to be a really close game. Then also the next match underneath that is another tie that sort of jumps out at you when you look at the draw as a whole. Tom Ford in sort of uncharted territory. He's coming here as a seed because he's been unbelievably consistent over the past few months and obviously got to the final of the International Championship. He's been around for a long time, but it is, like I say, different territory for him. Normally he's the hunter, now he's the hunted, so to speak. And he's up against a player that I'm such a big fan of as well. Noppon Sankam is such... There's 2 Thai players in here. And when you're looking at the prospects of a new sort of title winner from Thailand, you are always looking at Noppon and Tepchea. And they are completely different players. Noppon is much more solid. He's got a much better all-round game. But he can score heavily as well when he gets a chance. And we've seen him, beat top players at the World Championship. Not such a great record at the UK Championship, but he's got a chance to change that. This is a bit of a coin toss. Again, I think it's going to go close. I can see this being 6-5, 6-4. I can't see a player running away with it. And even though I probably have like a personal bias towards Noppon, my head is saying that Tom Ford is in just too good a run of form at the moment. So I'm going to edge him slightly. Then if we look at the next 2 matches, you're probably looking at, on paper, matches that you would strongly favour the seeds here. Mark Williams won a title already this season. He hasn't really done a lot since winning that title, but you can never really discount him. 2 times a winner at this event, although he's never actually reached a final here since 2010, and that was when the tournament was played at the old Telford Centre. Not to write off Fan Zhengyi too much, I mean, he is a ranking event winner, of course, in his own right, and he beat O'Sullivan in that final to lift that trophy. But, big stage, big arena, Mark Williams has been here time and time again. I do think he'll have a bit too much for him. Same goes with Kyron Wilson and Jamie Clark. Jamie actually done very well to qualify for here. Kyron Wilson hasn't done an awful lot this season. We haven't really seen much of him, particularly in the latter stages of events. Not really since the European Masters. But again, it is just that experience. Of course, Kyron isn't nearly as experienced as Mark Williams is, but he is still far more experienced than Jamie Clark is. And the reason I was so impressed with Jamie qualifying was I've seen Jamie play a few times this season where I've expected him to do really well or maybe spring a surprise result. But he's looked far below the levels of, the guy that's qualified for the World Championship before. But he's here on merit. But I do fancy Kyron to get the job done as well. So then it's all about trying to see who's going to make it to the semi-finals out of those 4 players. If I look at Mark Allen against Tom Ford, if that's the match that ends up happening, I think Mark Allen's again too strong, just too good at the moment. Mark Williams, Kyron Wilson, that's an interesting game. Weirdly, even though I think Kyron is out of form, I would slightly favour him to win it. And yeah, I'm struggling to look past Mark Allen, I'll be honest. There's some very good players in this side of the draw. But weirdly enough, I think Ding is probably the biggest challenge he has. That's not meant as any disrespect for the other players. I just think Ding's playing well, and he's obviously going to come in form because he's been playing for the past few days to qualify here. But if Mark Allen can get through that test, I think he can get through the next match, whoever he plays. And then I would probably, in my mind, I'm almost thinking that Mark Williams would give him a harder match in the quarterfinals. But I'm predicting Kyron Wilson to beat Mark Williams. So in that case, I'm going to plump for Allen. It's a safe bet, not exactly a risk, but Mark Allen would be my first semi-finalist. Now if we go into the second quarter, and Jesus Christ, this is, if you're looking for a quarter of death, this is the one. Mark Selby, Barry Hawkins, Jack Lazowski and Judd Trump all in the same quarter is filthy. Trying to pick a winner out of those lot is going to be really difficult. And that's even not taking into account the qualifiers that they're going to have to play as well. Starting off with Mark Selby, he's up against Mark Joyce. Selby, 2 times winner, started this season really, really well. He's kind of fallen off a little bit in terms of results, but I still think he is playing fairly well. He's just played against players that's been playing very well as well. Champion of Champions, thought he played all right. Ali Carter played a little bit better. Sometimes that happens in sport. Mark Joyce, the one thing that Mark has going for him in this match is Mark is prepared to scrap it if he needs to. And you would arguably suggest that he's more comfortable playing a scrappy type of game. The problem is he's playing probably the best player ever at winning it scrappy. And the issue is Selby can win it playing free-flowing snooker as well if his game is there. Not to discount Mark too much, he had a really good win against Joe Perry to qualify. But yeah, Selby is my strong favourite for that match. Now we've got Barry Hawkins against Ben Williston, and looking at Ben, really nice to see him just in the event. It feels like a while since I've seen him on my TV screen. And he's always been a player that he's one of those that he's almost better playing the big players. He's got wins against pretty much every big player you can think of. But that consistency and beating players around his sort of ranking is why he isn't where I think he should be. I think he's easily a top 32 player. But yeah, that little bit of consistency lets him down most of the time. But he has qualified for this event. unfortunately for him, he's up against, I'd probably say, the second most informed player of the season. Judd Trump has got that mantle by far and away. Barry Hawkins, since winning the European Masters, has not let off. Okay, he's not won another tournament, and yes, he hasn't reached even another final, but his performances still are really solid. He clearly did not take kindly to the fact that he dropped out of the top 16 before this season, and he's put in a lot of hard work to rectify that. Again, Barry Hawkins for me, and potentially fairly comfortably. Next, Jack Lisowski. Again, gonna see if he can try and win his first title. It's gonna be a kind of question mark that's going to follow him in literally every single tournament that he plays until he finally does win one. And look, if you're going to win your first title, not many better places to do it than the UK Championship. He's up against Jimmy Jones, a player that I really admire, a player that I've got a lot of time for his game. But Lisowski's looking good. I mean, it really does baffle you how he plays so well throughout a tournament, and then he gets to that quarterfinal, semi-final stage, and the wheels just fall off a little bit. He doesn't really implode. He just never really reaches those heights, and he always needs to do it in reverse. He needs to find a way of winning his opening rounds, just getting through them and gradually getting better towards the business end. It's so much easier said than done. You can't, just magically choose picking when you're going to find form. It happens when it happens. But, he's just so good when he's on it. And it feels like I'm just picking all the seeds. And that's typically a pretty amateurish thing to do, because qualifiers will always spring a surprise here and there. But so far, I mean, other than maybe Ding beating Allen or Nohon Sankan beating Tom Ford, I am just generally my head is going towards the seas, and it's happening again. I think Lisowski will win this again with maybe a few frames to spare. And if we're going to continue in that vein of picking the seeds, Judd Trump. There's no question. Pang Junxi, very talented, reached the crucible, played pretty well against O'Sullivan when he got his chances, but he's playing a man that is just head and shoulders above 90% of the tour. Didn't play well in the Champion of Champions final, but he's reached 5 finals already this season. He's won 3 in a row. He's making centuries for fun. I mean, I said it in my sort of review of the Champion of Champions. It's going to take that kind of level of performance that Mark Allen produced to beat him. And unfortunately, I just don't think Pang has that in him. So, and with the greatest respect to the other 4 players, if we do get that last 16 lineup of Selby against Hawkins, Lisowski against Trump, mouth-watering. Both matches you have to watch. All 4 players are in form. A couple maybe more informed than the other 2. But yeah, savour those matches if they do come along. Selby hasn't actually, we always sort of look at him as, man for the big occasions, which he is. But Triple Crown event-wise, it is the World Championships that he's dominating. He hasn't dominated the UK and the Masters as much as the Worlds, arguably because of it's a shorter format. And all of these matches are on a knife edge. And the problem that I've got is I don't want to be boring, and I do want to take risks in this prediction video. Otherwise, I'm just being a bit of a robot and a bit bland. But Judd Trump is the player that I'm looking at. I think, look, Judd and Jack have a good record, outside of your finals that they played in, which of course Judd's won all of them. Elsewhere, they do sort of share wins quite a bit. But Judd's just playing too well. I can't even really pick who I'd fancy to win out of Selby and Hawkins. That is honestly a coin flip. I have to go on form. It's Judd Trump. It's Judd Trump against Mark Allen. I'm really boring. I'm sorry. But that's just what I feel. Right then we go on to quarter 3. And now on paper, this again looks just as hard to predict as the other 2 quarters. But there are a few outliers in here, and I'm going to go into that in a bit more detail. Firstly, though, O'Sullivan, fresh on the back of his documentary that came out yesterday. You can watch my review of that as a little shameless plug, as that I put out yesterday as well. But O'Sullivan, he starts his campaign against Anthony McGill, and this is a head-to-head that O'Sullivan dominates. But as Rob Walker did talk about, McGill did famously beat O'Sullivan at the Crucible in a decider, and which was even more impressive because McGill was 10-6 up and then saw O'Sullivan come back at him like really hard. Difficult to see maybe what type of frame of mind Ronnie's in, but I always get the sort of view that when there's off-table focus on him, whether that's a controversial news article or a documentary such as this, it does almost feel like written in the stars that he's going to win a title. I'm not suggesting that that's going to happen this week, but I do have a strong feeling that he's going to play a big part in the tournament. He's obviously won the Shanghai Masters, dropped out of the Champion of Champions last minute, and hopefully he's feeling fresh enough and happy enough to play at his best this tournament. Anthony McGill, he hasn't actually done too much this season, but he's qualified. You know, that's kind of an assurance of Anthony. He may not have the consistency required to be a top 16 player, but you're guaranteed that when the big tournaments come around, he's going to deliver. If O'Sullivan's off his game, he loses this, but I suspect that he's going to be in a sharp enough frame of mind that he might just be able to edge it. Then we've got easily the quickest best of 11 that would ever happen. I mean, this match could finish 6-5 and it'll be over in about an hour 40 minutes. Rob Milkins, you know what? I've been impressed. I wasn't too sure how he would handle being a top 16 player, but he's done all right, and he's played in a couple of events that he doesn't normally get invited into. He was in the Shanghai Masters, he beat Sean Murphy. He was at the Champion of Champions, he beat Mark Williams. So, you know, he doesn't have stage fright at these big events. But Tepchea is just an unbelievable talent. I love watching him. The one thing that this match is guaranteed is mistakes, I think. Both of them are so wonderfully naturally gifted, and they just glide around the table. And if either of their average shot times is longer than 19 seconds, I'll be amazed. They're probably two of the top 5, top 10 quickest players on the tour. With that, though, comes risk, and it comes easy, unforced errors made on both sides. And this match is probably going to be decided about who makes the least unforced errors. You know, there's not going to be much tactical play. It's going to be quick fire, see who can get in and score as quickly and as fast as possible. For the simple reason that I haven't picked a qualifier to win yet, I'm going to go for Tepchea. Again, this is a bit of a coin flip. It's a really exciting match. If you get the chance to watch it, watch it. Whoever's got tickets to watch this match, I am very jealous of you because I'd love to watch it live. But yeah, Tepchea, give him a chance. I think he's going to have a result in him. I don't think he's solid enough to play any sort of deep part in this tournament. But both players won't mind this draw too much because they can both play their natural game freely. And it's going to be about who plays it better on the day. And I'm just going to shade the Thai player. Just. Maybe 6-5. Going next, John Higgins against Joe O'Connor. Higgins is another player, a bit like Mark Williams, a multiple champion of this tournament, but hasn't really had too much to shout about in York in the past decade or so. I think his last final was when he won it in 2010. And he's up against Joe O'Connor, who's a player that I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of in the next 2, 3, 4 years. A solid player, scores well, has a solid temperament, played very well in the qualifiers to beat Stephen Maguire. You know, he was 4-0 up. That 4-0 became 4-3. Very easy to wobble. But like I say, he's got a good mindset, a good temperament, and he showed that to get over the line. Higgins, kind of in a similar vein of what I said about Ding. I think he's playing really well. He's just struggling to get results against the best players. He played against Allen at the Champion of Champions in the semi-finals and just got blown away. And that is happening... Actually, no, that's unfair. Higgins is competitive against the big players. It's when he gets to the winning line where he sort of stumbles a bit and lets his opponent get there first. He's playing well. I think Slimline John, just like Slimline Mark Allen, is working very well. I fancy Higgins to be tactical and wily enough to get over the line in this one. Again, close. I don't think he'll run away with it. I think Joe's too good of a player to just sort of lie down and be taking a beating. But I fancy Higgins to get the job done. Right, now then, what to do about Neil Robertson? Bit of an insight into me. I am Neil Robertson's #1 fan. I absolutely love the guy. I've had a man crush on him since about 2006. So his form over the past few months has actually taken a bit of a personal hit on me. Not that I'm trying to make this about me, of course. And he's been very open about the reasons behind his drop in form, and those are completely understandable. The problem is, I've got no idea if he can win any match at the moment. I was looking at the qualifiers as they were coming through, and I was thinking from a biased point of view, from a Neil Robertson fan point of view, who would I want him to play? And I was like, I don't think I want him to play any of them. Because what we've seen so far this season is he's still making centuries regularly enough, but he's gifting chances. That's something that Neil Robertson and top players in general just don't do. They don't hand you 2-3 chances every frame, and that's what he's been doing to opponents. 3 times a champion at this tournament. The only thing that I can hope for is that he's found something on the practice table in the past couple of weeks, and he thinks, let's just give it one big push in this tournament. And then I think he's going back to Australia at the end of the year. So that's the hope. But he's playing a very talented youngster, Zhao Yulong. For a little while was in the sort of footsteps, that's not the word, in the shadows of other Chinese players. But he is solid. The issue for him is he's got a losing head-to-head record heavily against Neil. And the very first final that he played in, he played Neil Robertson and lost 9-0, which was a bit unfair of Neil. Could have given him at least a frame. But he's going to get a lot more chances. The times he's played Neil typically has been sort of during that 2018 to 2022 period when Neil Robertson was pretty much unstoppable. He's not that player at the moment. And I'm going, unfortunately, my heart wants to say Neil will win. He'll win the tournament. He'll win comfortably. He's back to his best. But I can't see that happening. Even if he does get through this first round, trying to see him get through this quarter alone is difficult enough. Yeah, unfortunately, and it pains me to say this, I am going to go for Zhao Yulong in this one. So who do I think is going to win this quarter overall? I'd love to say Tachaya. I would obviously love to say Neil Robertson. But I think it's going to become between those two veterans, Ronnie and Higgins. I think O'Sullivan, if he does get through against McGill, will have too much for either Tachaya or Rob Milkins. Higgins, again, I think is playing too solid to lose against any of those 3. Yeah, O'Sullivan buoyed by the documentary. I'm being really boring. I am being so boring in this preview. I should be predicting like a few wild cards here and there, but I just can't bring myself to do it. O'Sullivan, he's going to be the 3rd semi-finalist. Then we've got the final quarter, headed up with another really, really good first round tie. Sean Murphy against Hossein Fafai. Lot to love about this potential matchup. Sean won the first tournament of the season back in June. Hasn't really done a lot since. Fafai, again, actually, he's reached one semi-final at the British Open, but again, hasn't showcased sort of frequently enough how good he is this season. So this is a matchup between players who are, unbelievably talented, but perhaps not in the strongest of form. Still really exciting. Murphy, my view with Murphy is he'll either storm to a victory like 6-0, 6-1, or he'll lose. And I don't think Fafai will roll over. I think if Hussain can settle down pretty early, get a frame on the board, this will go close. And I really haven't picked enough qualifiers to win. So this time I'm going to go for Hussain to beat Murphy. What I'm then going to do, I'm going to cheat a little bit with these last 3 matches. I'm going to tell you that I'm going for the seeds on all of them. Ali Carter, really strong form. It's been a long while coming since he's last been a top 16 player for a tournament like this, but he absolutely deserves it. 2023 has been arguably his most consistent calendar year ever. 3 finals, he won in Germany and back in February. Matt Selt, solid player, been really good this season as well. But I just like what Ali's doing too much. Sangander, buoyed by the fact that he's won his first tournament. He's also been in another final. Elliot Slesser, he's a player that routinely qualifies for tournaments, but doesn't do an awful lot more than that. And I think Zhang's just on the crest of a wave. I think he'll get the job done there. And then finally, Luca Brazil, the world champion. He's another player that's kind of, he started off all right, but he slipped off the radar again. He plays Yuan Xishan. Yeah, Luca Brazil. I'm not given a reason. I don't feel like I need to. It's just a head thing. So, yeah, all of those seeds other than Sean Murphy to get through. But when it comes to picking the overall winner of this group, I'm going to finally grow a pair, go a bit risky and say Hussain Fafai. If he gets the job done against Murphy, I could see him doing the same thing against Ali Carter. Zhang and Luke Bressel, I think I'd go with the books and say Bressel to get through. And Fafai, again, I don't think he's got anything to fear there. So yeah, if Fafai can get past Murphy, and it's obviously a big if, I would fancy his chances genuinely of having a really deep run in this tournament. And that would be it, wouldn't it? My semi-final lineup would be Mark Allen against Judd Trump, Ronnie O'Sullivan against Hussain Fafai. And that would be a really interesting sort of semi-final lineup. I think you'd probably, a lot of fans would be saying Judd Trump, Ronnie O'Sullivan, that's the final we want. We've had it at the UK Championship before. We've had it at the Masters before. We've had it at the World Championship before. So why not have it again? I've just realised how long I've been talking at you guys, and I apologise. I did not realise that this video would border 30 minutes. But yeah, in the comments, if you've made it this far, please do let me know. Who are you looking forward to watching? What's your tie of the round? Who are your 16 predicted winners? If someone is able to give me a comment of the 16 correct first round winners, I can't give you a prize, but I can give you a hearty well done. And you know what? What's nicer than kindness from a stranger at Christmas time? But yeah, wherever you are, enjoy the snooker over the next week. It's going to be a lot of fun. I love these tournaments. And yeah, enjoy it.